Good morning. The title of this video is What the Heck is Wrong with European Descendants? Or obviously, what the heck is wrong with white people? And although I know this is not a general thing, but it kind of is. And I'll start out by saying that uh, a while back, a couple of years ago, I saw this movie called The Witch. Pretty good movie. And obviously, it's a movie. However, in the movie, they show you how things used to be back in the day. As in, back when Europeans moved to the American continent, what later came to be named the United States, and what those Europeans had to do. You know, basically, they were knowledgeable in various important things, such as building houses, you know, which they would do themselves. So they would design how it would be built. Kind of like the Amish, the Amish today. They design how the buildings they make are going to be made. And then they work and make it happen, like they build it. That's how it used to be, right? And obviously they knew about agriculture and farming and dealing with animals, all kinds of things that would allow them to survive, and have a decent living considering how hard things were back then. As I said, nowadays we do have Amish people. They live like that, and that's why I mentioned that. Although this is not a generally speaking thing, it kind of is, because yes, I know that there are white people that are not doing the things that I'm going to mention. But I want to start out by mentioning these great things, these great achievements that they used to do, including, for example, shipbuilding. They Europeans and European descendants made ships to carry large loads from one side of the ocean to the other. Obviously, great distances. Um, Something that, as far as I know, no other group has done, you know, historically speaking. I'm saying, obviously, I know, like nowadays in modern times, we got the Chinese making their navy, constructing their own ships. But I'm saying, historically speaking, uh, and even to this day, there are certain groups that have never achieved such a thing. For example, Africans. I have never heard of Africans making ships. They made things that floated around, small things, but huge ships that would carry them from one side of the ocean to the other, which with large loads. Historically speaking, going from making them with wood to now making them with metal, they've never achieved such a thing, as far as I know, right? So, historically speaking, Europeans have done these great vessels. But not only that, they built buildings that are so high that are called skyscrapers because of how tall they are. These are engineering marvels. Basically the by nature and turning it into something useful for humanity, right? Or the society in that area, right? And again, I could say that there are certain groups that have not achieved those things. Again, I could point out the African continent, right? And I'm not talking about the Egyptians in North Africa. Those are not sub-Saharans. I'm talking about sub-Saharans, right? No, North Africans are not sub-Saharans. Obviously, they're from the north, and they are not from that racial group. So, on top of that, we've had great technological achievements, like, for example, the creation of not the creation, but the distribution of electricity, and finding two different ways to transfer it, generate it, store it with AC and DC power, right? Those things, those great things that white people have done and continue to do. Now with Tesla making this satellites that provide wireless internet for people that subscribe to it, and many other great things that have been done historically speaking, and even to this day. And again, I know that this is not all white people are like this, but I guess we could say, generally speaking, white people are falling under the opposite of everything good that I have mentioned. All this progress, all this development have been done by people that thought of something. They came up with an idea, they designed that idea, and then they made it happen. And those ideas could go from being something technological to being political way to have society live, under those rules. Like, for example, the great American Constitution, those kinds of things. Great thinkers that were European descendants or European themselves, they came up with these great things. And now we're having people doing the opposite. Basically doing things that would destroy all the great things that other people from their same race came up with and made modern civilization be what it is today. And although I look white, and for all intents and purposes, I am white, some people would say I am not white because I am Puerto Rican. So everything I'm saying is coming from a Puerto Rican perspective. Someone that would probably not be considered white by many. And at the same time, I gotta admit, that although I am 70% white, I also am 13% native from the natives in the Caribbean and 11% black, right? So I'm a mix of things, yet I look white, right? So keep in mind that this is all coming from a Puerto Rican perspective. And the reason why I want to bring this video to the attention of whoever may listen is because years ago I started noticing how European descendants started becoming weak, really as in stupid weak, as in basically I'm gonna let others basically destroy me, and I will accept it. For example, they started out with this whole cultural appropriation thing, right? The wokes. Basically saying, well, because you are white, you cannot do X, Y, Z. You cannot use X, Y, Z because this X, Y, Z you didn't come up with. It's not yours, right? Which is freaking ridiculous. Especially coming from other European descendants, right? These wokes that promoted this stupid idea of cultural appropriation were Europeans or European descendants themselves, right? So they started out with that. But they wouldn't apply the same rule to other races. Like if say for example, I'm Puerto Rican, right? So I'm Hispanic. So if I wanted to do something Asian, whatever, I could get away with it. Well, maybe not me, because they probably wouldn't, like, just by looking at me, they wouldn't see a Puerto Rican. But maybe if they knew that I was a Puerto Rican, they would be like, yeah, he's a Puerto Rican. He can get away with it, right? Oh, but if it was someone that looks like me, but it's not Puerto Rican, then that person can't do it. Like, I don't know, dress with Chinese fashion or cook Chinese food or whatever, I could get away with it because I'm Puerto Rican. Someone that looks like me but isn't Puerto Rican couldn't get away with it because they're not Puerto Rican or black or whatever other race other than white. So they started out with that. But, and also, if you think about it, if they were to implement the same rules for everyone else, then nobody else could use all these great marvels that white people have made. These technological things that we all take for granted today. Like the fact that I can flip a switch and I have power running through my room in this case right now. Right? Because someone like Tesla came up with that, right? So imagine if everyone else had to basically live with the same rules that they impose on you, European descendants. Then everyone else from every other race that is not white would be effed. I'm not gonna cuss, on this video, but you know what I'm saying, right? So they started out with that. And then at some point in Europe, they decided to start allowing economic migrants, because that's what they are. They may say they are refugees, but they're not. Before this whole thing started happening massively in Europe, in 2009, I went to France. And when I was doing a tour, I went to Monaco and Monte Carlo. And while there, I noticed that there were a bunch of little shops selling Middle Eastern things. And I found it curious, Those people didn't even speak French. They had their little stores, and whatnot. And at some point, I started having a conversation with the tour guide in front of the hotel where they filmed the movie Casino Royale. And I tell her how I noticed all these Middle Easterners in there. in France, and again, this was in 2009, and she explains to me that because France used to have colonies in the Middle East, when they decided to set them free, they were like, well, those who want to, come to France, they can do it. It's whatever, So they did. However, she told me at that time, but we're having a problem with them. And the problem is that they will not adapt to the place that they're living in now. They will not adapt to France. They want the French to adapt to them. And then some years later, Angela Merkel decided to say, you know what? Let's open our borders and allow everyone else to come in. And obviously, the way that this idea was presented in a way to for the Europeans to be like, you know what? This makes sense. And how was it presented? Well, it was presented in the way of, well, you guys, as in Europeans, are not procreating enough. So because you guys are not procreating, the numbers of Europeans are falling. So we don't have younger people to take care of the older population, because the population gets older, and those numbers are gonna keep increasing if we don't have younger people reproducing and then taking care of the established system that will take care of these elderly people, with either healthcare or these socialist programs that are established to take care of citizens. So because you guys are not procreating, well, we gotta bring people so that those people will work and keep the system going, right? And that's how it was presented to the European population. And the European population were like, you know what? That makes sense, right? When in reality, the problem was caused by Europeans and European descendants, such as Henry Kissinger, when he went to the UN, and he promoted to the UN this globalist group with people who have basically politicians that are there to decide what is done with the different nations around the world, people for which we do not vote. Well, these people who are, again, practically politicians, agreed with Henry Kissinger's idea of basically promoting the extermination of humans in development in the womb. And you all know how that is called. I will not name it on this video for fear that this video will be canceled, censored by YouTube. But you know what I'm talking about. So their own idea, when I say there, I'm saying Europeans and Europeans' descendants idea, because keep in mind that at the UN, yes, there are other nations, but the ones that have most of the power are the European and European descendant nations, such as the US, I believe, England, I believe France is another, I believe Germany is another, and depending on how you want to consider it, because it's so large, it is part of Asia and Europe. Russia is another, right? those are, if I remember correctly, those five, in addition to China, they have veto power, right? Well, all those either European or European descendants, or however you want to consider them, in the case of Russia, but obviously they have a bunch of white people, although they do have a lot of Asian-looking people in there too. Um, they they accepted it. They promoted it to the smaller nations, and the idea was not only for this big powerful nations to adopt it, but everyone else. And the intention was to reduce global population and for the powerful nations to be able to exert their power into the smaller nations and keep the resources. That was the idea. But look at what that got us into. And so instead of them accepting how China did a couple of years ago, when they accepted the failed one child policy, how that has drastically destroyed their population. Instead of accepting that, they sold the idea of, let's welcome these people in so that they can work and and keep the system going. And so they did. And instead of them working, what actually happened is it raised the percentages of violent crimes in European nations significantly, ridiculously. And on top of that, these people, they decided, you know what, I'm not going to work. I'm going to live out of the government. And so they are. So what did you solve? You didn't solve anything. What you actually did was, instead of accepting the problem that you caused and you promoted, is you added a problem onto you. And why do I say it is a problem? Well, because not only everything I mentioned, but this happened in Italy recently. And these are protests pro a certain part of the world that I will not mention, right? Well, you can see the flags, right? You can see the flags everywhere. And those protests are pro that place. A place that has never actually existed. The name by which they like to call it has never actually existed. There is a place, however, that is called Gaza. That is a true place. But the other name that they like to use, for which they like to wear the flag of that place that has never existed, they are protesting in favor of that place that has never existed, right? That's the point. And these, although there may be some people from the religion of peace among that group violently protesting, well, we could see a bunch of white people there. So obviously, a bunch of Europeans. So now we are protesting, destroying infrastructure, private property, right? In a place that has absolutely zero to do with the conflict between the people of Gaza and the people of, the magical world of Netanyahu. To be completely honest, I have zero cares for those two places conflict. Zero. If they want to obliterate each other from the face of the earth, they can. It is not my problem as a Puerto Rican, as a U.S. citizen. And it is also not the problem of those people in Italy. But they're bringing their struggle to us as if it had anything to do with us. You know, while they destroy private property and government structure and whatnot, you know, and that's what Europeans and European descendants are doing nowadays. That's why I decided to title this video, "What the heck?" But you know what I'm trying to say when I say "what the heck" is going on with Europeans and European descendants. But not only that, because in the US we have that same kind of mentality. I hate it, by the way. I hate to hear people saying, both in Europe and in Canada and in the US, saying this is a land of what is it that they say, of not refugees, a land of foreigners. It's not foreigners, the word that they use. Basically, people that come from abroad, right? People that come from other places. I forgot the word. Again, I'm Puerto Rican, right? English is not my first language, although I am bilingual, as you can clearly hear. Well, they use that phrase. I hate that phrase. Because at some point, by the way, in the case of the US in particular, there was no nation at all in the American continent. Because the natives actually didn't, they were constantly moving from one place to another, right? So they did not go to one place and say this place will be called this from now on until thy kingdom come. No. They were constantly moving around. They had names to their tribes, you know, but they didn't name a nation in the American continent, right? That is currently known as the U.S. Then came the 13 colonies, you know, not a nation. And then at some point, those 13 colonies decided to create what is currently known as the U.S., right? And at some point, we knew, as in we Americans, because although I am Puerto Rican, all Puerto Ricans are born U.S. citizens, we knew that we needed more people from the old continent to come to the new nation that was established, that didn't exist, right, before, so that it would develop faster. And so we accepted people to come in. But we also, on top of that, created a constitution and a set of laws that had to be followed, right? To include, you know, laws concerning immigration. So to these people, it's like these laws do not exist. Like, and they have this stupid concept of basically they think in their magical world, such as you know, the magical world of Netanyahu. In the woke's magical world, borders are not a thing. You know, anyone can go anywhere, whenever, you know. But in the real world, we all know that's not true. You know, and so Biden did exactly the same thing that Angela Merkel started when the European Union started, and she was the lead the leader, the president of the EU, you know, he did the same in the US. And Trudeau did the same in Canada. Anyone can come. As a matter of fact, as far as I can remember, Canada. I don't know what the wording is, but basically they say that they basically they have no, like, the government itself says that they have no particular culture or anything like that. They're whatever. It's whatever, you know. That's how they think of themselves, right? Because although Trudeau is no longer in power, they still have the same way of thinking. Again, European descendants. And Biden, another European descendant, opened the gates to anyone that wanted to come because they were refugees. Sure. And in that group of refugees, I don't know if it was 12 million or it was 20 million. I forgot the actual number. It had to do with two. It definitely wasn't 2 million. So it was either 12 or 20 million came in during Biden's term. You're gonna tell me that all those people are refugees? And by the way, there is a, I don't know if it's a law or something that basically states that if you are a refugee, you don't get to decide, you know what, I'm gonna go to where I think is the most awesome place, you know, because they have the most money or they have the most socialist programs from which I can live out of other people's jobs, you know, work. No. There is a thing that basically states that if you are a refugee from X place and the next safest place to you is Y place, you don't get to go to Z place. No, you stay in Y place because you left X. X is where you claim to be, you know, fleeing because whatever stupid reason you came up with. I don't know. One of the reasons is I'm a member of the alphabet community, so whatever, that makes me an automatic refugee for some reason, right? So you left X, and in order to flee, the next place to you was Y. But why did you not choose Y as that place to remain? Oh, because you're not really a refugee. You're actually an economic migrant, much like the people of the religion of peace are in Europe. And then you decided to go all the way to Z, because that's where it's nice and awesome. And they have all these socialist programs from which you can live out of the other people's work, right? And that's what these people are doing, right? And talking about that, it reminds me how Europeans are so ridiculous that at some point, seeing how the European Union was going, they say, you know what, in England, they were like, you know what, we're gonna separate from this BS because this BS is what's causing the problem, you know. And so they separated from the EU, but they kept doing the same thing, allowing all these economic migrants to live out of the government and creating violence. And so, you know, bringing it back again to the US, this happened recently. These are people that are protesting ICE doing their job because, thankfully, we are no longer under Biden's rule. And nowadays, we have a president that's actually making, the government work the way it should, which is following the laws, right? And this happened recently. You would think that as a right wing person, I'm a libertarian after all, and people on the right, we love to give women their rightful place in society and defend their place in society. You would think that I would be against what we just saw. Actually, not. I welcome the fact that that ICE did what they did to her, because although I don't believe in a police state, right? I do believe in following the law, following the order established that again has allowed society to be what it is nowadays. That's what I believe in. And these people, as you can see, they're white. In this case, they are European descendants. They want to destroy everything that has been established. And that ICE agent is there to prevent that from happening. The destruction of everything good that we have now. It is so good now that, you know how I started talking about the movie The Witch, and how back in the day everyone needed to work, build their own houses, do farming, know about agriculture, dealing with animals, tending animals so that they could have meat and eggs and all these kinds of things. Well, now we don't have to have any of that, because thanks to the white men, mostly, right? I know Asians have had something to do with that, although a lot of Asian things have been modifications of things that were created by white people. Now, these modifications were enhancements. They were done better, right? But the original concept, design, creation was made by white people, right? So we have it so good. These people that want to destroy what we have right now, which are most of them either Europeans or European descendants, they have it so good that they don't know what it is to lift a finger, because they can easily go to a grocery store, buy whatever, they can flip on a switch, they have power, and if they feel like being lazy, they can live out of other people's labor and have the government pay them their food, their housing, their healthcare, and other things. Things that other places don't have. By the way, I don't like those things. I wish our nation didn't have those things. Our nation, again, being the US. And I wish that Europe didn't have those things either. Because if they didn't have those things, all those people from the religion of peace wouldn't be going to Europe. The reason why they're going to Europe is to live out of the government, right? So I don't agree with these things. But we have it so good that these people don't know, they don't understand what got us to where we are now. And they want to destroy it because they don't understand. They think that food manifests out of the ether, and housing and whatever, everything is, it just pops out of nowhere, right? And that's what they're doing. So again, what the hell is wrong with white people? That's essentially the real title of this video. What's going on? And again, this is coming from Puerto Rican. Anyways, I think I talked too much. This video came out long. Anyways, if you were informed by this video and I made you think, I would like it for you to share this video. And that's pretty much it. Until the next one.